Okay, we're live for the Data Value Show. I've actually lost track of the number. It's in the 40s now anyway, but today we're going to be talking about architects and data in a volatile world. And I've got Andrea, I should have checked and pronounced it correctly, Andrea Guali, but I'm going to find out now. Andrea, did I pronounce your name? Can you correct me on your surname?
Terrible, but it's not a problem. The pronunciation, the right pronunciation is Andrea Gioia, but it's okay.
Okay.
It's okay.
Okay. Well, Andrea Gioia. Let me see if we have. I'll blame it on my. I haven't got the best voice at the moment, as we're just discussing backstage. I think I left some of it in San Francisco at the summit, but yeah. So, thank you very much for coming on the show. I think I was saying before, a long time follower of your content. First time chatting today, but I really the quality of your content and then the conversations that are triggered from it and the thoughts myself that I've had after seeing it, I've always found very, very useful. I know how difficult it is to get good content out there, and I get content out. It's not always good, but it's more my brain farts. But yours is always a very high quality content. So thank you very much. And would you like to give yourself a bit of an intro and your correct pronunciation of your name for everyone, and a bit of background about who you are and what you do?
Yes, sure. First of all, thank you, Chris, for having me in. It's a pleasure for me. My name is Andrea Gioia, but it's not a problem. You were almost there, so it's okay. I am a partner and CTO in Quantyca. Quantyca is a consultancy firm specialized in data management based in Italy. And I am also the co-founder of Blindata, that is a SaaS governance platform that we have created as a partner of Quantyca, as a spin-off of Quantyca. So basically, I work both as a consultancy, as a CTO. In particular, I'm in charge of providing advisory services to our customer, helping them to design their data strategy. And I also collaborate with the Blindata team to design the new feature, define the roadmap of the product. And so I'm really involved still in practical activity. And more in general, my background was in the data field since my university degree. I have a degree in computer science with a specialization in artificial intelligence at the time where artificial intelligence wasn't cool, 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago. And then just after my degree, I started to work in the data field as a consultant. I moved into different consultancy firm, and now I am in Quantyca. Of course, when I started, the data field was mainly data warehouse, ETL, reporting. Then in 20 years, everything is changed, and I follow all the change and the revolution into the field.
Yeah, it's an exciting time, and I think my background everyone knows, but I've been in this industry a while, and I refer to myself as a recovering data architect. I always like to try and go back to what my natural enjoyment is, and it's the architectural aspect. And I think over the recent years we've been sidelined, like data modeling. We were a complication to people, or a blocker. And maybe that was the case in some scenarios. Enterprise architects didn't have a reputation for being very agile and connected to reality in some days. I'm not saying all of them were like that, but that was that old days, that ivory tower architecture approach. And I believe I think it's a time for a bit of a dusting off, some of those architecture ways of thinking and working, but then updating them with a product mindset and more of a business focus as well. So we've got two aspects to this title at the moment. So we've got this architects. So I think we're both agreeing that we need to move to a more architecture-led roadmap now, and I think the engineers, they do a great job. At engineers build things, and you don't always need to build things.
Let me say, I usually separate the architect from the architecting, no? So it's very important to have enterprise architecture. Then this can be a function, can be a role. It's not important. It's important to architecting, to have a function that is able to explicitly define the architecture. Because at the end of the day, you will have an architecture in some way or another. It depends if it is an explicit architecture that you design with some goal in mind, or it's something that come out from the different implementation and create a lot of problems. So
I suppose it could be, it's either architecture by design or architecture by what
an emergent architecture, because at the end of the day, if you are building different product in your organization and you have a portfolio of product, the sum of this product create an architecture, but probably is a big ball of mud with a lot of spaghetti integration that is very complex to evolve over time, no? So it's important to have a function that can be a centralized function with some dedicated architect, or can be a federated activity made by different persons that have not in the job title the name architect. But it's important to explicitly define the overall enterprise architecture that you want to have in order to make the different pieces, the different products come together in a coherent whole and achieve your enterprise goal, not just the local optimization, but the global optimization of your system.
So, and again, as you were talking now, I was just thinking, is, we all like this perfect world, and of the fact that with architecture, it would all be maintained. Everyone would have these entities defined, the data models would all exist, and we know unfortunately, with the real world reality, it doesn't happen, and there's a few reasons for that. I think it's the overhead and cost of doing it, and maybe the friction it causes, and business pressure to deliver things over keeping things maintained. But I suppose there's a couple of ways of addressing that. One, we need to make it easier, and maybe have that ability to keep retrospecting, adding to that your architecture, so you can keep it updated with changes as your organization grows. And I suppose is the other one is we need to sell the benefit of it, and up until now, as architects, we're reassuringly expensive. It is there is a higher price tag, and I think what you were saying there, providing fractional architecture advice, but with that partnership sort of way, I don't think you can just come in and just feel the pulse once and go out. You need to be part of the regular cadence to give that sound advice that's going to fit for that particular company. But yeah, so the volatile world being the second part of this title is companies that need to differentiate themselves or stay ahead of the market. They need to be able to move quickly.
Yeah.
And the world, as you say, the world is volatile. Supply chains change. Target market change, financial implications, and mergers and things like that. If you don't have a good architecture defined, it means that you're not able to react quickly to a volatile world, which means you'll lose your competitive advantage. And there's a value associated to that. It's very hard to quantify, but there is a value associated. So, what do you think that's? You think what other things are preventing us as having more of an architecture-led data strategy?
Yeah, I think that especially if nothing changed, there are not hard decisions that the organization must take at the architectural level. No, if everything remain always the same, you can define what you want to achieve, your future state, and you can execute against your future state. But architecting is not just about defining a solution against a target state, but but also design this solution in order to make flexible enough to adapt to all the changes that will occur during the implementation, not to be enough flexible to adapt to the new situation that will come out during the implementation of the solution itself. I like very much the definition of Gregor Hope that say that architects live in the first derivatives. No, the architect try to manage change, no, not just design and architecture, but architecting in a way to create something that can adapt very fast. So basically, enterprise architect try to make the hard decision that must be taken at the beginning of the project, and that you do not want to make it wrong. And the hard decision are the decisions that are difficult to change over time. That cannot. It's very something that you bound to. It's not simple to change, no. And so in this way, architects create optionality basically in different ways. First of all, deciding if a decision can be deferred over time or must be taken now. So try to postpone all the decisions that are not a priority in the moment in order to make a decision in a future moment in time when there are more information, and so you can take a better decision. And the second aspect is, among all the decisions that you have to take now in order to move and start to execute your strategy, deciding which decision need an extra design in order to build in that decision some sort of flexibility in order to make the decision reversible over time. Of course, it's not possible to make all the decisions reversible and flexible, because if everything is reversible and flexible into a system, the system is very complex, and complexity is one of the reasons because it's difficult for a system to adapt. So it's very important, the role of the architect, because I have to decide which decision required a sort of flexibility, an extra work to add flexibility, and which instead are the decision that can be taken without too much flexibility. So they create option, and it's very important to have this option when the situation is very volatile, because you will know for sure that something will happen during the implementation. And if you have a monolithic architecture that is too rigid, not flexible, you take a lot of time to adapt to the new situation, and so you miss chances. No, so it's very important, the role of the architect, as more the context and the environment is uncertain and volatile.
Yeah, I've just been making notes, and there's a good question. I just comment here from Vivek. We'll get to him in a minute, but I totally agree with what you're saying. It is, but the challenge. There's a couple of questions I had. It was the reporting line, and it's always a challenge in organisations. For example, we talk about CDOs. A lot of them fail, or aren't given the ability to succeed. So then are because the reporting line or the decisions that they aren't able to make. And in the same way of that architecture, I've always seen them as being a team that it's a service that's provided. They're not always embedded or maybe allocated to a project, but there's always someone that can override maybe what they're saying, and especially when we've gone a bit too decentralized. And so I think the other thing that you mentioned there was about decisions and what decisions need to be made and what order they need to be made. But I think it's also it's never as simple as just a one-to-one relationship. You're going to have that multiple relationships where things are going to have relationships between different pieces. So give an example. So you have your data platform. BigQuery, you're on Redshift or Databricks or Snowflake. And I saved the best till last, but I'm biased. But then after you've selected that, there'll be certain options that are available for your ingest or for your orchestration. But I think the next thing, that the problem that people, or the mistake that people have made, is they don't actually define that architecture, which we're talking about, is actually having it built into like a very simple very simple Lego brick approach of I've got my orchestration, I've got my monitoring observability piece, I've got my ingest patterns, I've got my quality rules, I have my data modeling approach, and I have my data acquisition or consumption, whatever you want to call it, and then patterns it. And that's, you could probably go down a little bit more, but it's 4 or 5. I've got my hammer listed there, but it's not many more than that. You may end up with multiple products because of the organization that are filling those gaps. But the problem is everyone always talks about the product name and not what it's actually doing as part of as part of your platform.
Yeah, I agree.
And as those vendors, we were talking just before, start eating into other people's capabilities, that's Salesforce. That's not a good example. But your let's say now your Fivetran now does all the data transformation and does reverse ETL as well. It's now, your Fivetran, but which bit? What feature or capability are you referring to? I think architecture 101. Just have a very simple one to start with, and then map some of your capabilities or your products that are satisfying that. You'll find it's quite difficult. Sometimes it'll be like, whoa, which one is it? Which side of the fence does it actually sit on? And maybe it sits in more than one.
But I think that when someone think we are talking about enterprise architecture, not application architecture and software architecture. And usually when you think to this kind of architecture, you think at someone that find out the capability that you need to have into the platform, then map the capability on the software and select the software. Maybe this is part of the work, but it's not the most important one, because an enterprise architect is focused on design, the organization and the technological architecture. So it's more interested on how the different part of the system interact. So it's not important if you decide to use a technology or another. Maybe the architecture can have an opinion and suggest, but for the architecture is more important how the different part, the technological one and organizational one, fit together. So defining the interfaces between the technologies, but also the interfaces between the teams that work upon this technology. So it's not really important, the technology. Maybe the architecture can have an opinion and participate in the procurement phase, define the capability, but this is not the main job of the enterprise architect. The main job of the enterprise architect is guarantee that all the components in the system, organizational one and technological one, can work together with less friction. What we want to have is that each team, each part of the system can work in an agile way in order to answer to the needs of their counterpart in the business or in the market, but they can also cooperate together. So we do not want to have a million of siloed solutions, but we want to have an architecture that guarantee the level of agility required by the team, but also the possibility to do some sort of economy of scale and put together the different effort in a coherent way. So this is the goal of the architect, not just selecting Snowflake over Databricks or whatever, but telling to the team what is the best way to use the selected technology to interact, to be interoperable, to have the possibility to put their work together.
Yeah, so do you see them actually providing, or in your mind, maybe I wouldn't say requirements, but it's the scope, the NFRs, the functional requirements for that piece, the puzzle, and the guidelines of, look, I know I need to have this done like this because it's required later in another part of the architecture that you're not aware of, but I've got that vision of another interface that's needed there. So yeah, so do you see that? Is that what you're saying? Is sort of
yes, I think that the architect should be more focused on defining architectural policies, and so it's more important for the architect not define database versus Snowflake, but define, for example, the API that is used among different teams to share the data, or how to define SLA and SLA, and what are the minimum level of services that must be provided for a certain tier of service. No, these are the rule of the game. Then everybody is free to play with the tool that you prefer.
They've given the rules of engagement. You've given them the guardrails of what they need to work on. I'm just going to put sorry, it's not in the right order. I think Vivek will get back to your question in a minute. Sunil's was easier to answer. But it's. Do you think flexibility will add complexity?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah,
if you want to do everything flexible, because to ingest flexibility into a system, you need to do some over design, design in order to be sure to be open to different possibility in the future. It's more complex than go straight to one specific solution, iter optimized, but not flexible and very hard to change in the future. If you want to have the option to change a piece of the architecture in the future, you have to build around that piece in order to isolate it, create the right interfaces. So these add complexity. And for this reason, I said before, not all the part of the system can be flexible, because if everything is flexible, the system as a whole is very complex. And if a system is complex, it's not adaptable. So basically, the same thing that you do to make the system adaptable, make the system not adaptable. So this is a complex work for the architect or for the architectural function. Decide where the flexibility have the greatest value and where we can give up to flexibility and go straight to a specific solution.
Totally agree. I think I'd add one more to that as well, is reusability. I think that's another thing that should be a balancing act of
reusability. It's one of the most important things, because basically a way to an organization to adapt very fast on a changing environment is to build things that satisfy the use cases that come from the business, but not as a monolith, but as a composition of a reusable block. So basically, you satisfy the requirement, you satisfy the specific use case, but you have not created a siloed solution. You have also created a library of building block that tomorrow can be reconfigured in a different setup in order to be reused to satisfy another use case. So in this way, basically, time over time, use case over use case, this library of building block, reusable component increase. And so the implementation of new requirement became even more fast, because you have not the need to re-implement from scratch stuff, but you can use component that you have in your library.
So whose responsibility? And I totally agree. And I've many companies I've seen have tried it in some ways. Some have been more successful than others, but it normally comes down to the responsibility of who maintains. So the enterprise architects defines your functional components of your platform and the requirements that they need to satisfy. Business to some degree, but the non-functional as well. But then who then maps let's call them assets, platform assets that we call them, that get created, that then becomes that catalog. Do you see that being done by product teams or the data product teams, that centralized architecture team still? Where do you see that fitting in a modern organization now?
It depends. I think that depends by the nature of the organization. So the important thing is that when you implement a use case, the first thing is you try to design is what are the building blocks that you can use to implement that use case, and try to make the building block reusable. So that, for example, if we are talking about analytics and you have to satisfy an analytical use case, you create first the data product, the pure data product. So the data product that just exposes the data that then is used to satisfy the use case. and design them in order to be reusable over time. Then in some organization, that work of creating the data product and building the use case can be implemented by a central team. In some other company, you can go more toward the data mesh, and so you can decentralize the ownership on this data product toward the domains. Of course, as soon as you have created a modularized architecture, because each module is independent by the other one, can cooperate but is independent, you can also move the responsibility and accountability on that module on a different team in a quite very easy way. So depends by the need of scalability that have the organization. In some situation, it's better to move more toward a decentralization to domain, and so moving from managing data as a product and that's it to data mesh, full decentralized data mesh. In other situation, there is not this need, so the central data team manage all the data application, but not in a monolithic way, not in the big data lake where everything is connected with everything, but as a collection of data products. And in my experience, also a lot of my customers are in a hybrid situation. So maybe they decentralize the data product that are more consumer oriented toward the domain, but all the ingestion, the data product that are more source oriented are managed by a central team, or the other way around, or all the domains are managed centrally by a data team, but there are some domains that are independent. So there are different topology and level of decentralization that depend by the context and even the maturity in the adoption journey. No? Even if you want to go toward the data mesh, so a fully decentralized approach, maybe you are not doing that overnight. No, you do that in an incremental way, starting from some domains and then try to scale out. No. So it's also possible.
It was quite interesting. You talk about team topology, and I think you had highlighted it's not easy because there's so many moving parts and many stakeholders you need to keep happy. But I had Paul Rankin, used to work at Roche, he was at a conference that we did, and he's been on the show as well. But yeah, he was talking about team topology, and we've been in many companies as well, and everyone wants to go for this self-service, decentralized approach, and maybe they realize they've gone too far. They need to come a little bit back, or some haven't gone far enough, and it's finding that sweet spot. And I think that the challenge that I've seen as well is that once you give something away, you never get it back. so you can't. It's if you go well, it's hard to. And I think that's probably the reluctance why people haven't gone and gone that more decentralized. But I think if there was I suppose, a better understanding of, look, here you go, I'm giving you the keys to this at the moment. At some point we will review it, but we'll only do it, and we've helped you now, and later on there's going to be benefits of you centralizing and using our one. Will you be prepared to take on that technical debt and then come in later? That would be the ideal solution, because you get the best of both worlds. But unfortunately, emotional attachment politics.
It's not easy, because of course we are talking about such a technical system. So also the enterprise architecture, there is the business architecture, the operating model, and there is the IT architecture. So these two aspects come always together and must be modified and co-evolved together. But of course, the technology is the easy part. We have a lot of technology. Technology can be installed basically overnight, but the change in the organization take more time. It's more slow, because there is a lot of organizational inertia. You have to convince people, show the results, changing also the power play within a company sometimes. So maybe also it's not possible to do whatever you want in some context, so you have to find the right trade-off. But finding the trade-off is the work of the architect, no? But are not only technological one, are also linked to the organization, because some technological architecture are not feasible if you have not a specific organization operating model in place, no?
Totally. And I'm going to get to some of the questions in a minute, but just as you were saying, I think over my time of being an architect, and I probably had architect in my title a good 15, 20 years of my career. I was more of a UN ambassador sometimes of going in there and, yeah, you're right. Yes, you're right as well. But, there must be some common ground. And it was, I suppose it's more of an advocate of what you're doing as well. And you can't force architecture onto someone. You can't tell an engineer, build it exactly like this, because, well,
is also an advocate. It's also, for me, in a distributed system in which there are different teams that work on different projects, is also an advocate of the global optimization, no? Because each team try to do a local optimization, and sometimes they do a fantastic job for the specific domain, but creating a lot of negative externality to other domain, no? So the total cost is a big win for the domain, but create a lot of friction, a lot of extra cost to the other domain. So the architect should also have this global view and try to advocate for a more sustainable world. Okay.
So I've just put the wrong comments up there. I'm going to go to. I totally agree as well. But sorry, not to, just to add that there. But this is from Sonia. So shout out to Sonia. We've worked together a few times, and her question is about as the organisation grows and becomes more data consumed, how does data mesh scale up? Is decentralized federation approach scalable for fast-moving companies? So I've got a view on this, but I'd love to hear your one, Andrea.
Yes, I think that one of the reasons at the base, the foundational reason, that the foundational problem that the data mesh try to solve is the scalability. No? So in an organization that have an hyper growth, is growing very, very fast, data mesh is a solution that try to cope with this constant change that is that come together with the growth of the company, because basically in a modularized solution in which each component, each data product is managed by different teams, really close to the source of the data, really close to the domain, you have a lot of agility. So everybody can work independently with limited friction or dependencies with other teams. Because what make a solution not so much scalable is when you have a lot of teams that work on different pieces of the system, but these pieces are a lot of coupling. There is a lot of coupling between these pieces. So one team need to wait to the other to finish his work on the relay of the output of another team to continue his work. This slow down the flow of the activity. No? But if we have models that are independent, that can be composed but are independent, each team can work independently, and this allow a fast flow and scalability. But it's important to have the architecture, to have the policy, because at the end of the day, if the pieces are not able to come together, you have created a million of siloed solution, and this is not economically convenient, no? Because every time you have a new problem, you have to start from scratch creating a new solution. Instead, if you do a lot of work and you make the basic component reusable, all the work that you have made can be reused in the future. So a long answer, but yes, it's the reason why the data mesh has been designed to scale data management solution in a fast way.
Yeah, and I've seen, and I think Zach was on Joe's show just before this one as a guest, and I've seen her present, and obviously I can't say I've read all the book. I've gone through a book and had many discussions on where data mesh hits reality. So what's in the book, how you adapt it. It's not like a one size fits all, and I think I've talked about things like TOGAF and things like that. They're great guidelines, and you need to see what actually works for yourself. And where I've seen it go wrong, though, is some victimism of its own success. Is that everyone goes for it, they publish all of their content or data products on there, but no one knows. It's not well catalogued. I'm using that term. It's very overloaded. But it's not all. It's not all joined up with that. Maybe the thing we're talking about now. It hasn't got that architecture high level architecture that they can plug these things into. It's part of this part of the platform. And if you haven't got any naming conventions, everyone calls everything what they want. There's going to be like
I
5,000
think that
products
you
out. They
have
can balance sheet this. Yeah.
Yeah, the fact is very complex because the data mesh is basically is an operating model to manage the data. No? So this means that to execute successfully a transition toward a data mesh, you need to change or rethink your organization, the way you work with data. No? And this is very, very complex. And if you are just focusing on creating data product without putting in place all the other elements that are important to the success of this approach. For example, having a platform that centralizes all the common concern and simplify the implementation of data product, to have a governance and architecture that make the product interoperable. It's very difficult to succeed in data mesh. For this reason, I think that the biggest failure that I see in a data mesh are sometimes companies that are trying to implement it in a too much ambitious way, overnight, basically, not top down. You need a lot of buy-in to implement data mesh, so you need to progress incrementally. Maybe start start focusing on what is a data product for you, start to creating the first data product, then create a little bit of the platform, then define the rule, and in incremental way, start to decentralize toward the domain. No, starting too fast, applying data mesh by the book, it's very difficult. When I see that this succeed, is in reality is a fake mesh, because the decentralization exists only because there is a central team that do an enabling to the domain. But as soon as the central team disappear, the domain are not able to manage by themselves the data product that they own. So it's important to go in an incremental way and create buy-in a little by little.
I think I was just thinking purism versus pragmatism. You can't go. You don't have to have that purist approach for it. You have to have a pragmatic approach, and then that North Star of where you want to get to. And it's a journey. I think it's a team sport. I think I mentioned you need to take everyone with you. I got there's another question here from. It's not coming up. It's from Hussein. Oh no, sorry. It is. No. Have to go back further. We get so many questions. Vivek, sorry. Companies struggling to grasp how new technology will affect their systems due to the abundance of platform. How can they devise a strategy for a solution that saves time and cost effective? So I'm going to take a stab at this one for a little bit, and then I'd love your view on this as well. Is that
I think yes, I read it. I think that the biggest problem that I've seen in the last 10 years probably is that every time there is a problem related to data, the first thing that comes into mind is to find a solution in a new technology. No. But I think that now we have a lot of technology, more technology than ever. We can do everything with this technology. Are fantastic. It's not a technological problem. So if you have a problem with data, scalability, with quality, with modeling, whatever, it's your problem with data. Probably the solution is not to buy a new technology. Probably the technology that you already have in place are enough. Also because there is a lot of risk that you buy a new technology and at the beginning you go more fast because the innovation of the new technology solves some of your problem, but not the root cause of the problem, because the root cause of the problem probably are in your organization, in the processes. And so very soon you are going to replicate the same problem on the new technology. I have a lot of customers that I've seen a lot of situations in which the approach is rip and replace. The old data platform became a legacy, but now we have a new technology, so we can respond to the new technology. But they redo the same error every time, more fast, because the new technology is better. So you do the same error more fast, but it's
I totally agree with that. And I think I've posted or talked about this in the past, is that because of the mistakes of the past implementations, we have to give it a new name to go and get the budget for it. So we have to go and rip it out because it's always the technology's fault. It wasn't anyone else's fault. So we've been building data graveyards, building these great shiny platforms that no one ever comes to because we didn't think about what the business need. I think the common mistake, and we're all technologists, and unfortunately sometimes we lose that connection to why we're doing this. Everything we do is in our in our department or for the work we do for the companies is to help them meet their business objectives, is to help them be a success and to help them realize their strategy. And as you say, you already have some of the technology. It could be just a better way of working, more automation. I like to use the term friction. So friction is the time, cost, and effort to do a particular activity. And if it's great to go and rip out and write some Python code or something to go and do that, but how often do you do that activity? What's the frequency of that happening? And if you look at the frequency plus the friction aspect, that will really help you understand this is the area we need to focus. And maybe technology is the answer. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just you need to sort out your business process of putting an integration in place rather than having some manual download or email process that it can be automated. So that's some great questions. I tell you what, I'm going to stop with the questions because what I'd love to do, because we freestyled. I haven't even seen if we've covered the things we're meant to, but I'd like to bring up a couple of slides that is our specialist. I don't normally prepare slides for these ones, but Andrea's had some great content that I had to share. I also just realised that I hadn't changed. It's just the two of us mode. I had a background on the whole time, but there you go, back to the background again. So I think this was. I've probably seen some of your content, but this one really resonated for me. I'll just remove this now as well. I've got I'll get rid of that. Still got one of the. Okay.
I can see them.
Yeah, you still have the comment coming up, and yeah, I think this was a great representation, and the misconception. And I had quite a few jokes on this. Is that we've had chief data officer, we have a chief information officer. Should we have a chief knowledge officer? And I think I had chief wisdom officer. So talk me through. And obviously I've read your post on this one, but how did you come up with this, or what was your thought process to relate all these things?
Yes, basically the starting point is thinking about the concept of data as an asset. No, it's the data an asset or is not an asset? Yes, sure, the data is an asset according to the accountability definition. The accounting definition of an asset is a resource owned by the company that has some potential value. That's true. So the data is an asset, but it's an asset that have value only in use. When you use it, no? So it's not like a gold. So you can store the gold in a room and you have a lot of value because gold is fungible. So you can sell it. It's very simple. And the value of data is only in use. So when you use it to produce an insight, generate an action, produce business value, create an outcome that have an impact on the business and improve the metrics related to the strategy that you are trying to implementing. So collecting is not enough. You need to find a way to use the data. In order to use the data, you need to put in place not just a system in which you store the data, but a complete information architecture. And the information architecture have at the base the raw data, of course, but then you need to collect and manage also the metadata, because you want to put the data in a context in order to understand what the data means and how it can be used. If I told you that the number 26 is a data, but you cannot do anything with this data. Now you need some metadata to create the context and transform the data into an information. So 26 is the degree temperature that is in my room now, for example. And so you can understand what does it mean and how you can use this piece of information. But also the metadata is not enough, because what also you want to codify is the knowledge on how the information can be used in the context of your business domain. So, for example, if there is a 26 degree here today in Milan, it's important to codify the knowledge that if you are a company that sell ice cream, maybe it's a good day to do some promotion because the temperature is high. And this is the knowledge. And then having the data, the information, that the metadata that contextualize the data and transform the data into information, and that the knowledge that describe how your business domain work, then you can activate this data. You can generate insight, you can produce action, but you need to have all this information architecture into place. And for what I see, we have a problem in managing data, but we have even bigger problem in managing metadata. And we are just at the beginning or try to understand how to manage and represent the knowledge that is divided in the mind of different business experts. No? And so I have a really big focus on that, especially on the upper part, no? From metadata to knowledge representation, ontology, knowledge graph, the way to put all this information that compose the information architecture in a current representation, no? in a wall that can be queried and used to generate action.
I just wanted to give a great example. I'll just give you one that I used. I think I did this presentation after I'd seen your one, and it was a ski themed one. And yeah, it's a data, the runs, the lifts, the weather, the information of what lifts and runs are open, knowledge,
exactly.
the down.
Better example than mine, but it's okay.
Yeah. And then wisdom, knowing which day to stay in the pub and not bother going on the slope. So, I'll it's not as fancy as your one. I'll go back to yours again now, but I just want to show that one. But I think there was obviously lots of, when this came up, there was there's lots of passionate people out there, and there was a lot of people saying in which order it is and how it's related and why the context is there, and I think what we're trying to do is actually tell a story, and again, back to this, it doesn't have to be exact or anything, but if you have this way of thinking that, you've got to get to the intelligence, you've got to get to the actual insights or actionable activities, and to get there, you've got to go through these layers. And we talked about the ontologies, team ontologies, the platform ontology, or the metadata. We're bad enough looking after just the data. As you say, the metadata is like a second-class citizen. But I think I just showed one that this triggered. I mean, it's, again, not as polished as your stuff, but I was chatting to Matt Housley. We have regular catch-ups, and one of the things we were talking about is, do you show it as infinity? But I think the Morpheus loop was, I suppose the reason why it is that it's not black and white, it's not clear. Data becomes information, and it will turn into knowledge, and it can provide you that wisdom. But I think the other thing I talked about is that why I think wisdom falls back into it is that the wisdom or intelligence is either in our brains or in the LLMs now, or the AI models now. But it's that, using that example earlier of what day to stay in the pub, knowing the wind conditions or the direction of it, the temperatures, that's maybe an avalanche area. I'm not going to go there, but you've just known that from maybe years living in that mountain, of seeing what's happened. If that data hasn't, that local knowledge isn't represented in the model for predicting when it's safe to go out there, you need to be able to provide that wisdom. Well, if you collected this data and if you've got these other things as well, you would be able to get, you'll be able to automate that wisdom. Not that I want to do us all out of jobs as humans, but yeah, that's what what we're trying to do is bring decisioning, more stuff that be automated with the guardrails. But it's how we make that evolution, that loop, that development cycle. How can we speed that up? And I think go back to that architecture thing, and that's what we need to. It's a volatile world. If you want to be able to manage that journey of data going to wisdom, you're going to need to you need some good architecture.
Absolutely. Also, a good architecture, and in this case, a good information architecture, because basically now organizations have a lot of problems, but are able to store the data. are less able to manage properly the metadata, and the knowledge is a question mark, no? But it's very important to have all these two layers in place. And I like the concept of loop, no? Because at the end of the day, you want to have the knowledge, you want to have data, information, and knowledge to have an insight and do actions. But the actions generate all the other data. So it's a loop, no? It's a system that feeds itself, no? And the more data that you have, more information, more knowledge, more action, and it is a cycle and a flywheel, no? That can create a positive loop. And this is very, very important. And the other thing, you have mentioned the large language model. Of course, it's very important to have also knowledge in place, no? Because in the large language model, in order to customize through RAG or other type of customization, you need to pass to the model. You cannot pass the data itself and then ask the model to infer how your business domain works. You can do, but you have a lot of limitation, of course, no? Instead, you can pass your knowledge, the representation of your knowledge, and tell to the system, okay, my business domain works in this way. These are the rules that govern the way in which my business domain works. And then please answer my question. Given that context, given that knowledge, please ask to my question, no? And so it's very important also to have this representation of the knowledge, that nowadays the knowledge is spread across the mind of different business people, no? And but there is not one person in a complex organization that have the total knowledge of how the organization works, no? It's a good way to codify this information and leverage this information to automatize different processes, no?
And it's to the best of their knowledge. They may not be accurate as well. Just as you were talking about, Gen AI or LLMs, I'm going back to a question that Hussein put on there earlier. I think the old answer initially is that it was never going to replace. We're never going to have Gen AI replacing enterprise architecture. I don't think that world will come, because it's going to have to get accurate data to make that. But I think that it can be you can use, as a as an assistant to help you refine a story. I think you can see in my spelling mistakes, my post I don't use generative AI to create my stuff. I might do a bit of spell check at some stage, but what I have seen it useful for is that where you've got you're trying to get a common terminology or language that people will understand, and everyone has their views on it, and to be able to have a story that is able to resonate and be able to help you define your architecture to the right audience. Maybe I think some Gen AI can help, but we can't. There's no way. Do not put the hands of all our enterprise architecture into Gen AI, because it's going to have to learn from someone, and you don't know who you're going to learn from. So.
Yes, can work as probably as a copilot, but I think not for the architect itself, but for the ones that in the local team must work to be compliant with the policy defined by the architectural team or the architectural function, to make more easy to automatize some work that must be done locally to compliant to the architectural policy defined centrally. So, for example, maybe you locally can use a sort of API, but centrally has been defined another API to communicate the data across product. This translation can be done very easily by a generative AI algorithm without having to do it manually. So can automatize a lot of things if they are well defined by the architect or the architectural function, no?
I totally agree. Complement rather than the replace. I had a couple of the slides, and we've nearly got about 8 minutes left, or I have a hard stop anyway because I've got a call straight after. But and I know it's later for you anyway. You've probably got your evening drinks coming up, because you're
exactly. It's my last.
So I'm keeping you from having your evening. But and I think this is another one of your good one pages that's helping to describe what we're doing. So this domain driven design, and again, it really links into that enterprise architecture piece, because your enterprise architecture should be made up of those domains, and those designs, once at domain level defined, it's down to your team to make sure it solves the problem with the right solution. So another great side on that.
Yeah, I think that the important thing that is not so well known in the data practitioner, no, the domain-driven design is more related on software development, and so yeah, I try to explain that it's also important when you create a data product to apply some principle of domain-driven design. And one of the most important one is the concept of creating a common and shared model across all the different stakeholders that participate in creating the solution. No, usually what happens is that when we design a data product, there is a business people that declare some needs, then there is an analyst that translates the needs in requirement, then there is a developer team that take the requirement and translate into code, and all these actors use a different language and a different way to model the solution that they are building. And so basically at the end, on one side, the business user have a need, and then the result is something quite different because they get lost in translation. No? A good idea of domain-driven design is that all the actors participate in the creation of the solution, talking the same language, the ubiquitous language, that is the language of the business, to create a model of the solution that is a shared model. So it's not something that is in the mind of the analyst, in the mind of the developer, in the mind of the business expert, but it's something that is visible, represented with the ubiquitous language, and that everybody can understand if they are moving from the problem space toward the solution space in the right way. No? So this is a way of representing information, in this case at the single solution level, no? Because we have a language, we create a model, and then I like the definition of, I don't remember the name, but the fact that the instance of the data product running in production is a side effect of the model. So the first goal of the team is to create the shared model that everybody agree upon, that is a good model to create the solution. And then the solution itself is a side effect. But the first thing is to create the right model.
The hard work is in getting the agreement. It's
always.
The technology is the easy part. It's the people processes are always the challenge.
It's understanding first of all, it's understanding the problem in the right way. Understanding the problem in the right way.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we're approaching up on time. So I'll give you a chance to, have you got any events you're going to soon, or how can people reach out to you? And obviously they should follow you on LinkedIn. That's a recommendation from me as well. But
sure. I will be speaking at Big Data London in September, and in October I'm writing a book on managing data as a product with Packet that should be released if I'm able to keep with my schedule. Should be released in October.
Excellent.
So these
well
are
done.
The two things. So you can just check on my LinkedIn. There is the link on the book. It is in pre-order.
This is why you've got some really good pictures, because they're going to be in your book. You say, okay.
Sometimes yes. Sometimes is even a better version of the one that there is in the book, because it's passed some time, so I redesigned them. I have some material. I have a backlog of material to publish here.
Yeah, and I think it's it's not until you actually get this down and write it down, the ideas become reality. So kudos to the work you're doing. I will see you at Big Data London as well. I'm presenting there as well. I think I've got a panel. We've got a booth there as well, and I'm doing a panel in the evening, and I've got a presentation about architecture, actually. I think. I think it was how architecture can become a force multiplier. I think I called it. I have to go and check the title. Yeah, brilliant. Well, I will see you there. Thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
You'll hear me, anyone in the audience, but my voice is pretty much gone now. So, but yeah, great chatting. In fact, we have one more slide, but just as look. Oh, we'll close on this one. It's not easy. So this isn't the formula for building an architecture platform, but to look at all the different moving parts, it's that's why you're going to need to have us consultants. We still have a need in the world of a purpose.
Yeah, this is the formula. Just this is the formula to calculate the price of an option, and I think that the mathematician that defined this formula also won the Nobel Prize. The important thing is an option have more value the more is volatile the context in which the option is defined. No, so it's true also for the architecture. The architecture have more value when the context is more volatile.
Great insights, and we'll try and see if we get the Nobel Peace Prize for creating the data platform architecture formula. I don't think they'll give it out for that, but thanks again. Thanks everybody in the audience. Some great questions, everybody. Sorry I didn't get to ask them all, but yeah, we'll try and address some of them on the after the event in the comments. So thanks again, everyone.
Thank you.
I don't know who's on the show next week. Actually, I have got Zach Wilson's agreed to go on there. So yeah, watch this space. I think we've got something on next week anyway. So thanks, Andrea, and I'll speak to you soon.
Chris.
Take care. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.